Okay, so like when you get some kind of like, oh, a really scary medical diagnosis. I mean, for yourself, right? Or like someone you love, it's like your mind is just flooded with a million questions. And
Mhm.
they're all terrifying questions too. Like, what are we going to do? How much time do we even have? And like, even just practically, how are we going to manage all this stuff?
Oh, absolutely. It's just like a wave of fear and uncertainty just washes right over you.
Yeah. And it feels like your thoughts just spiral. And I don't know about you, but like for me, it's always to the worst case scenario.
Yeah. You just get stuck imagining the absolute worst.
Exactly. And so, in those moments, what you really want is just something to like grab onto something solid, some kind of perspective that can help.
For sure.
So that's what we're going to try and do in this deep dive. We're going to go explore one perspective that's offered in, well, it's a biblical account.
Okay.
And it's meant to be encouraging, when you're dealing with this kind of intense fear. So the passage is from 2 Kings 6. And the basic setup is that the king of Aram, he sends this huge army to capture the prophet Elisha.
Yeah.
And they end up surrounding the city where Elisha and his servant are staying.
I mean, can you even imagine waking up to that sight, an entire army surrounding your city?
Yeah, that's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine.
Like, talk about a worst case scenario.
Right. And so the text says that Elisha's servant reacts exactly how you'd expect. I mean, he's totally in despair.
Understandably.
Yeah, he's just like, what are we going to do?
I mean, that feeling, right? That feeling of being completely outnumbered by the problem.
Mhm.
It's, I think, something a lot of people can relate to, when they're facing a really serious health issue.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it feels like you're up against something just way bigger than yourself.
It's like David and Goliath.
Right. And so what's so powerful about this story, though, is how Elisha responds.
How does he respond?
Well, he basically says to his servant, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them.
Okay, so just at first glance, I mean, that doesn't seem to line up with what's actually happening, right?
Right. It's not about the physical numbers.
Exactly. I mean, the servant can clearly see they're totally outnumbered.
Yeah. And this is where things get really interesting. The text says that Elisha actually prays for his servant's eyes to be open.
To be opened.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does he see?
Well, when his eyes are opened, he sees that the mountain is full of horses and chariots of fire
Wow.
surrounding Elisha.
Oh, wow. So like this whole other army that no one could see before?
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is.
So like in the story, this is meant to be an actual like physical army, right?
Well, the text presents it that way, yeah.
Okay. But I mean, obviously we don't have to take that literally.
Oh, good to know.
But I think what's so important here isn't necessarily like the specific image of this army. It's the idea that there's a reality beyond what we can immediately see.
Yeah, it's about shifting your perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on like the overwhelming problem, you start to see the potential for this like unseen support. And I think just psychologically that can be so powerful when you're dealing with fear.
Absolutely. I mean, our minds tend to fixate on the negative.
Right.
And so anything that can help us shift our focus, I mean, it can make a huge difference.
So this source takes this image, right?
Mhm.
And it applies it directly to what you might be feeling, when you're facing some kind of scary medical condition.
Okay.
It acknowledges that it can feel like you're literally surrounded by this formidable army, this army of symptoms and, negative test results and financial worries. It's just like they're closing in on you.
Right. It can feel completely overwhelming.
And so the source says, do not fear, for those who are with you are so much more than those who are with them.
Yeah. And it highlights the prayer that
Yeah.
Elisha offers, that your eyes would be opened,
Uh,
that you'd be able to see a greater reality beyond just like that immediate fear.
Yeah.
It encourages you to take your eyes off your enemies,
Mm.
off those overwhelming challenges, those fears that are just closing in on you.
And what's really interesting is that the source makes this claim, right? That the power of these enemies, that the power of, these medical conditions, that the power of these anxieties, it's limited
Okay. Limited compared to what?
compared to a far greater power.
Okay. So it's not denying the reality of the problem,
Right.
but it's saying that there's something even bigger at play.
Exactly. And so the source introduces this idea of the exceeding greatness of God's power working for you and for your loved ones.
Okay, so it's emphasizing not just any power, but this specific power, this exceeding greatness of God's power.
Right. And it goes on to describe it as the same power that raised Jesus from the grave.
Okay, so a power that's capable of overcoming even death.
Right. And it places Jesus in this position of ultimate authority, far above every other power, every name.
So it's like saying that ultimately everything else has to submit to this authority.
Exactly. And the source connects this back to the idea of these enemies, these medical conditions.
Oh, yeah.
And it suggests that even the names of diseases, things like human papillomavirus, bacterial meningitis, Parkinson's disease,
Hmm.
it's saying that ultimately they too have to yield to this higher authority.
I mean, that's a pretty bold claim.
Yeah.
It is.
Interesting.
And then here's like the final point. The source concludes by saying that because you are in Christ, in this deep connection and shared identity with Jesus, this reality, this reality of this greater power, this is something that you participate in right now in the world.
Okay, so it's not just some far-off concept.
Exactly.
It's something that's accessible to you right here, right now.
Right. So that brings us to like a final thought, for you, the listener.
Okay, I'm ready.
If like the source suggests there is this greater unseen reality and power at work,
Okay.
what might that mean for how you approach the challenges you're facing right now? Those really tough challenges, those scary things.
It's worth considering how this perspective of a greater power, how it could shift your focus,
Yeah.
how it could impact your sense of possibility.
That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, food for thought.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Of course.